Welcome back to Sunday Night Spookies, the podcast dedicated to exploring the mysterious and the spooky unknown. My name is Lex.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is episode 6, our Valentine's Day special.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Now, it's Valentine's Day, if you are listening on the release date, as you should. We're kind of touching on true crime, but not really, because we don't really want to do true crime.
It circles back to a paranormal scope.
Yeah, true crime, and then it ends with haunting. So that's what we're going to talk about today, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Because, surprise, St. Valentine's Day.
Right. Also, heads up, if we sound sleepy, it's because we
are.
Very much are. We did an investigation last night. It went very late, and
we just walked into the door.
We just got home, and now we're creating more content. So please bear with us. If we giggle a lot or go on tangents, we can't help it.
So, if you don't know, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre has a lot to do with some gang activity. If you've heard of it, you've probably heard of Al Capone.
I think everyone's heard of Al Capone.
Yeah, Al Capone being behind the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. We kind of dumbed it down a little bit because it is so these were very large gangs.
And their history is very well entwined.
Very well entwined. There were so many facts and side stories, and he said, she said, they know him, he knows, we brought it down to the bare minimum as best we could so that you can still understand it. And even then, it's a little tricky. So keep up if you can. If not, thanks for listening anyway.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the Al Capone gang, everybody associated with his, all his men. We're going to talk about the Moran gang, who was kind of a rival of Al Capone's gang, and the Purple gang comes in as well. So heads up on that. A lot of gang talk.
Yes.
It's going to start a little confusing.
It's going to end confusing too.
Yeah, well, hopefully things will be cleared up as we go.
Yes.
So, Valentine's Day, 1929, at 10:30 a.m., 2122 North Clark Street, Chicago. 7 men were murdered, execution style, by 4 men.
Yikes.
The victims were Peter Gussenberg, a frontline enforcer for the Moran organizations; Frank Gussenberg, the brother of Peter and also an enforcer of sorts. I'm going to butcher this name. I'm so sorry. Albert Kachelect goes by James Clark, which is significantly more easier to pronounce.
Definitely.
More easy. That's fine. He was Moran's second in command. Adam Heyer, who was the bookkeeper and business manager for the Moran gang. Reinhard Schwimmer, and this one's weird. He was an optician who had abandoned his practice to spend his life gambling on horse races and associating with the gang.
Because why would you want to be an optician when you could have a life of crime?
Yeah, and horse racing.
And murder.
Yeah. Albert Wainshank, who managed several cleaning and dyeing operations for the Moran gang. And it's important to note that his resemblance to Moran, Moran is the name of the ringleader. Kind of like how Al Capone and his gang, you know the name Al Capone. Moran is Al Capone's equivalent and rival. Albert's resemblance to Moran himself is allegedly what set the entire massacre in motion. And we'll get to that. And John May, who was an occasional car mechanic for the Moran gang.
An occasional car mechanic.
Occasional. 2 of the 4 men that were responsible for the murder were dressed as police officers, and 2 of them were dressed in suits and ties. So in the 20s, bootlegging and gang activity was high society. So you'd always come dressed in your best suits for, gang shit.
Yeah, I like to pull out my police uniform.
Yeah.
For my high society events.
High society gang events.
Yeah.
The weapons used to commit the murder were 2 Thompson machine guns.
Yikes.
And they had a lot of ammo. A lot of ammo. When the real police arrived on scene, shockingly, Frank Gussenberg, one of the victims, was still alive. And they didn't just pop 7 shots and go. They unloaded round
like
after
firing
round.
squad style.
Absolutely. He had 14 bullet wounds and was rushed to the hospital. And when he was asked who did it, who shot you, he replied, "No one shot me."
He says with 14 bullet wounds.
With 14 bullet wounds. Okay. He died 3 hours later and didn't say anything else on the matter.
Yet you cannot. Snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
Okay? We just... No telling.
No telling. So Al Capone, like I said before, was widely assumed to be behind the murders. It was known that Al Capone was out to kill Moran. Like I said, this guy was his rival. Long story short, they had been rivals forever, and there is so much beef between these two guys. But on this particular, I'm gonna go kill this guy, like this particular bout of, I should get rid of that guy. Moran was competing against Capone to be the top dog of the bootlegging industry in Chicago. And Moran had been stealing Capone's booze shipments from Detroit. Not good.
That's messy.
That's messy.
Yep, they were like hijacking it, like the trucks or something, and just taking it.
Yep. And it was like completely take over the, the whole plan. We're going to go in and take over.
Can't be easy to find a lot of booze from Detroit to ship it to Chicago without anybody knowing because it's prohibition.
Yeah, for real. So it was kind of known, or it was rumored, that Capone had a plan to lure Moran and some of his men to the specific warehouse where this occurred, with the promise of a large shipment of stolen whiskey that was supplied from Detroit's Purple Gang, which is where they come in. So Capone was like, I'm going to stage the shipment. He even had 2 of his men take empty trucks to Detroit to to really set the whole thing in motion and really, go through all the steps. So, of course, Moran, being the guy he is, was like, oh, you're getting shipments of stolen whiskey.
I'm going to hijack those. Thank you.
I'm going to hijack those. And that's kind of the plan. He's like, I'm going to stage this ostentatious bootlegging operation because he knew Moran could not pass that up.
Right.
So the Moran gang got there to the warehouse where this happened at 10:30 a.m. Moran himself and one other gang member were actually running late that day. They were late to their own heist. Shocking.
Same. Literally, I will always be late to every
heist.
Every encounter that I ever am a part of.
When they approached the opposite side of the building where this was going on, they noticed a police car parked. And so they immediately turned around and went to a nearby coffee shop under the ruse of, we just want coffee.
Yeah. We're not here to steal liquor. We're only here for
coffee.
A cup of coffee.
Moran also had one of his men, Albert, who was the same height, same weight. He dressed as the same way as Moran. Hat, tie, suit, shoes, everything. Just in case it happened to be, not legitimate. Shocking.
Right. Weird. At least they knew who they were messing with.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Once Albert, the fake Moran, was seen entering the building, that's when everything was set in motion. So like I said at the beginning, Albert was said to put this whole thing in motion because he looked just like Moran. He was groomed to look like him specifically for this purpose. So that he could show up and Moran
could just stand by and be like, okay.
Well, if you think about it, how many
that's my guy.
Yeah, how many times did Al Capone go in all of his events?
I imagine not much.
Right.
No, because there's too much.
You're the ringleader. You stand back and let your minions do it.
Right. There's too many opportunities for failure or being killed. Like, you're not going to put yourself in the line of fire. Pun was not intended.
Good one, though.
But it worked. No, you're going to have somebody else do it. You're one of your cronies.
Right. So, like I said, the 2 men that were in suits, the 4 perpetrators, 2 men were in suits. They entered the same entrance as the Moran gang, pretending to be the collaborators. Like, hey, we're here to get this shipment, whatever. The 2 police officers, quote unquote, entered another entrance, and as soon as they entered, hands up against the wall, drop what you're doing, typical police banter. They then, once everyone was up against the wall, their 2 men included, their 2 inside men, were acting like, oh, we're getting hijacked here, we're getting caught.
Right.
They made a non-verbal signal to their 2 companions, who hastily jumped out of the way, and the 2 officers completely opened fire, spraying the 7 men. They even continued to fire after all 7 men hit the ground and stopped moving. They emptied, and all the ammo they had on them was emptied. After everything was said and done and everything was cleaned up, the coroner later said that the faces of John May and James Clark were completely gone. They had to pull out like dental records to find out who they were because they had no idea. They had no heads left. It was just gone.
Yikes.
To complete the performance, the officers left the building with the 2 guys in suits in handcuffs. and put them in the police car that they had stolen and drove away. And so the neighbors, anybody who heard, whatever, oh, these two guys are being arrested.
Right.
Like it complete the, not that you need, all that ammo for whatever. And that's the end of the event. That's what happened. They drove away with their two companions. They left everybody there. There was no Canadian whiskey.
Yikes. It was all for nothing.
All for nothing. And I think they had thought they had got Moran. Mm-hmm. They had no idea it wasn't the real Moran.
Everyone thinks that Al Capone has something to do with this. Here's the thing. Did he? More than likely. I'm going to say it's like a 99% that he did. But I have all of the details on the investigation, and it's lengthy, but it is interesting.
We thought we'd leave that to the law student,
It's interesting. Yeah, so we'll just dive in. It's a mess. I will try to be as clear as I possibly can, but there are a lot of names, and the police really just didn't know what they were doing. Within days of the massacre on North Clark Street, Al Capone had received a summons to testify before the Chicago grand jury on charges of federal prohibitions violations, because he had already been suspected of, not suspect is not even the right word, they knew he was doing it.
Oh yeah, they didn't have enough evidence.
They didn't have enough evidence, but he couldn't attend his summons because he was unwell.
Oh.
Those are his words.
Course.
He was too unwell. He was too unwell to attend. So it was known amongst the town that Moran was hijacking Capone's Detroit-based liquor shipments, and the police had already focused their attention to the Purple Gang. It's a predominantly Jewish gang in Detroit. So they were kind of looking around the Purple Gang, looking around Al Capone, and so they ended up finding these two landladies across the road from where...
Poor landlady.
I know. They were across the road from where the massacre happened. Their names were Mrs. Duty and Mrs. Orvidson. They had taken in 3 men as roomers 10 days before the massacre. And their rooming houses, happened to be directly across the street from the garage that the massacre happened in. Mrs. Duty and Mrs. Orvidson picked out the mugshots of Purple Gang members George Lewis, Eddie Fletcher, Phil Keywell, and his younger brother Harry. But later, they wavered on their identification. I never saw the word recanted, like they were like, oh, that didn't happen, that's not what I meant. They just were unsure. And so I didn't find whether or not somebody in the Purple Gang intimidated them into changing their identification. But the police questioned Lewis, Fletcher, and the Keywell brothers, but all 4 were cleared, and they, despite being cleared, remained associated with the crime for quite a while after that, but they were never charged. There was some talk that the police had been involved, but they think that maybe that was like the whole point, because they were dressed up as cops.
Right, and back then, I'm sure it still happens now. I'm almost 100% sure it happens now somewhere. Mm-hmm. But you bribe police officers. Right. You do, you hear that all the time.
Yep.
Like, even in the 70s, that was a huge problem still. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure if he was Al Capone, really, there were so many men,
powerful guy,
money, all kinds of. I have no doubt that they either stole the police car or they went to their cop buddies who were, double living,
right,
and was like, hey, we got some shit to do, man. Here's however much money is. Here's some stolen Canadian whiskey for you.
Right. Let's see what we can arrange. On February 22nd, police were called to Wood Street to investigate the scene of a garage fire. When the police arrived, they found a 1927 Cadillac sedan disassembled and burned.
Oh, good.
So from there, and I couldn't figure out how they made this decision, from there they were able to determine that whoever the killers were had used this specific car, because I guess it was a sketchy situation. Yeah. And so they were like, you know what, it was them. They used that car. Police, this is where it gets confusing, so I will try to speak slowly. Police traced the engine number to a Michigan Avenue car dealer who had sold the car to a James Morton of Los Angeles. The garage had been rented by a man calling himself Frank Rogers, who gave his address as 1859 West North Ave. That address belonged to the Circus Cafe, which was owned and operated by Claude Maddox. Now, Claude Maddox was a former St. Louis gangster with ties to the Capone Gang, the Purple Gang, and the St. Louis gang Egan's Rats. So that I really don't understand being in multiple gangs.
Isn't that
thing? I thought so, but he was.
I guess if you're like a spy or double living,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right. Sure. Police couldn't find any information about James Morton, the supposed owner of the burned 1927 Cadillac, nor could they find any information about Frank Rogers, the man who rented the garage, but they thought with Claude Maddox, they might have had a lead. Just minutes before the killings, a truck driver named Elmer Lewis had turned a corner a block away from 2122 North Clark Ave and sideswiped a police car. He told police after the fact that he had stopped immediately, but the uniformed driver, who was missing a front tooth, waved him away. Then this confused me because I'm like, why would a cop just wave you away after you sideswipe them? Like, no, man, it's okay.
Yeah, I thought that too. Like,
yeah, it's okay. You just go. It's fine. You sideswiped a police car. No worries. It's fine. I thought that was weird. Well, nearby, the Board of Education President H. Wallace Caldwell also saw the accident, and he gave the exact same description of the uniformed driver. He was wearing a police uniform and was missing a tooth. And when they told police that, they were absolutely sure that the man missing the tooth that they had described was Fred Burke, a former member of Egan's Rats. Fred Burke and his friend James Ray were known to wear police uniforms whenever they committed a robbery. Police then announced that they suspected Capone gunmen John Scalise and Albert Anselmi, as well as Jack McGurn and Frank Rio, a Capone bodyguard. Police eventually charged Jack McGurn and Scalise with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, but Capone didn't let that happen.
Of course not.
Instead, Capone murdered Scalise and Anselmi and Joseph Hop-Toad Guenta.
Wow. Perfect timing.
Yeah. In May of 1929, after he learned of their plan to kill him.
Oh.
So they... It's fine. So he killed 2 of the 3 people that were suspected.
How convenient, you know?
Mm-hmm. But then the police dropped the charges against McGurn because there was no evidence at all.
None whatsoever.
He did get charged with the Mann Act. And the Mann Act basically says that it's a felony to engage in interstate transport, so crossing over state lines, of, quote, any woman or girl for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery or for any other immoral purpose. And so I'm like, what did he do? Did he like bring prostitutes across state lines? I don't understand. Basically, he took his girlfriend, across state lines just to marry her. And that's all they could get him on was the Mann Act because they found out that he did that. So basically, they just like did a random crime so they could get him in jail for something.
That makes sense. That happens today still.
Yeah. The case of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre stalled until December 14th of 1929 when the Berrien County, Michigan Sheriff's Department raided the St. Joseph, Michigan bungalow of one Frederick Dane, the registered owner of a vehicle driven by Fred Killer Burke. That's his, like, cool guy name.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I want a cool guy name.
We'll come up with one. Well, we already have one.
Oh, yeah. Road Possum.
And Prison Pony. It's fine. That's a whole other story.
Yeah. Story for another day.
Yeah. Burke had been drinking that night.
Well, what else are you going to do during Prohibition?
Right. So Burke was drinking on December 14th, and he rear-ended another vehicle and drove off. Because that's what you do, apparently. I don't mean that. Don't do that.
Yeah. Sarcasm. Learn it.
Patrolman Charles Skelly pursued Burke and forced him off the road. Skelly jumped onto the running board of Burke's car, but ended up being shot 3 times and died.
Jesus Christ.
The car was found wrecked and abandoned just outside of St. Joseph and traced back to Fred Dane.
No.
Who was the owner of the Michigan bungalow that they found the car for Fred Burke at.
Wow.
Interesting.
Also, a little bit of a reaction for a fender bender.
Yeah. Out here shooting cops because you got in a little
ding.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I've been hit many times. And I've never gone out and shot anybody for it.
That. It's fine. By this time, they figured out that Fred Dane and Fred Burke were in fact the same person.
No!
Yeah, didn't see that coming. And that he was wanted by Chicago police for his participation in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Police raided Burke's bungalow and found a large trunk containing a bulletproof vest, $320,000 in bonds that were recently stolen from the from the Wisconsin bank, 2 Thompson submachine guns.
Oh, wait, 2 Thompson?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it's almost like those were used in
maybe, possibly, who knows?
No,
they were.
Guys, we're really tired. Did we just say we only had 3 hours of sleep?
It's fine. They also found pistols, 2 shotguns, and thousands of rounds of ammunition.
Thousands of rounds.
Yes. So the St. Joseph authorities called the Chicago police to let them know what was happening, and they requested that they send down the 2 machine guns. They used the new science of forensic ballistics to identify both weapons as those used in the massacre.
The new science. I love that.
It's not new now, but...
No, it's cool that was like, oh, this is a new thing. We'll use it to do this. That's kind of cool.
They also discovered that one of them had also been used to murder New York mobster Frankie Yale a year and a half earlier. Unfortunately, no other concrete evidence surfaced in the massacre case. And Burke was captured over a year later, because they never said they got him. They just said they searched his home. He was captured over a year later on a Missouri farm, and the case against him was strongest in connection to the murder of Officer Skelly, who he shot and killed.
Yeah.
So he was tried in Michigan and was subsequently sentenced to life in prison, but he died in prison in 1940. So he only spent like 10 years in jail before he died. So that's like the investigation. Okay. And it gets a little bit messy now because
now
some guy, it's all messy, but this guy tries to kind of claim that he's a part of the whole thing.
Oh, for like fame, right?
Yeah, I'll let you decide for yourselves what you think is going on. I almost didn't include it, but then I'm like, no, I have to, because this guy's like claiming to be he knows what's going on. He knows who did it, whatever. So on January 8th, 1935, FBI agents surrounded a Chicago apartment building at 3920 North Pine Grove looking for the remaining members of the Barker Gang.
Separate case
altogether. Separate thing. A brief shootout erupted, resulting in the death of bank robber Russell Gibson. Taken into custody were Doc Barker, Byron Bolton, and 2 women. Bolton was a Navy machine gunner, an associate of Egan's Rats, and he had also been the valet of Chicago hitman Fred Goetz. Bolton was privy to many of the Barker Gang's crimes and pinpointed the Florida hideout of Ma Barker and Freddie Barker, both of whom were killed in a shootout with the FBI a week later. Interesting. So he's a snitch.
Snitches get stitches. That sounds so weird coming out of my mouth.
Right, it's fine. Bolton claimed to have taken part in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre with Goetz, Fred Burke, and several others. The FBI had no jurisdiction in a state murder case, so they kept Bolton's revelations confidential until the Chicago American newspaper reported a secondhand version of his confession. The newspaper declared that the crime had been solved, quote unquote, despite being stonewalled by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, who did not want any part of the massacre case. Versions of Bolton's story went out in the national media. Bolton, it was reported, claimed that the murder of Bugs Moran had been plotted in October or November of 1928 at a Wisconsin resort owned by Fred Goetz.
Oh, I mean, it's so weird that people thought Al Capone was planning this.
Right, weird. Present at this meeting were Goetz, Al Capone,
no,
Frank Nitti, Fred Burke, Gus Winkler, and Louis Campagna, don't quote me, Daniel Saratella, William Bocelli, and Byron Bolton. Just saying. The men stayed 2 or 3 weeks hunting and fishing when they were not planning the murder of their enemies.
I cannot see Al Capone
hunting and fishing in between
gang murder plots.
In between planning a plot to murder a bunch of people.
How weird.
It's fine. Bolton claimed that he and Jimmy Moran were charged with watching the SMC cartage garage and phoning the signal to the killers at the Circus Cafe when Bugs Moran arrived at the meeting. Police had found a letter addressed to Bolton in the lookout nest and possibly a vial of prescription medicine. Bolton guessed that the actual...
possibly have a... Here's the thing. It could be a vial of prescription medicine.
It could not be. We don't know. Test that shit.
It's just a weird... Yeah. It's just like, how do you test it? What is it?
So also, going back a little bit, Bolton claimed that he was in charge of phoning the signal to the killers at the Circus Cafe, which I talked about earlier, was owned by Claude Maddox. And they don't really... They talk about it being a lead, but then they kind of just drop off.
Yeah.
Until we get here. So Bolton guessed that the actual killers had been Burke, Winkler, Goetz, Bob Carey, Raymond Crane Neck Nugent.
Crane Neck. That's my new nickname.
And Claude Maddox. So 4 shooters, 2 getaway drivers.
Yes.
Bolton gave an account of the massacre different from the one generally told by historians. He claimed that he only saw plain-clothed men exit the Cadillac and go into the garage.
The police went into the police, quote unquote, went into a different entrance. Maybe you couldn't see the entrance.
That's true. Who knows? So this indicates that a second car was possibly used by the killers. A man named George Bridget claimed to have seen at least 2 uniformed men exiting a car in the alley and entering the garage through its rear doors.
Huh. Weird.
Yes. A Peerless Motor Company sedan had been found near a Maywood house owned by Claude Maddox in the days after the massacre. And in one of the pockets was an address book belonging to victim Albert Weinshank.
No.
Interesting. Bolton said that he had mistaken one of Moran's men to be Moran.
You don't say!
After which he telephoned the signal to the Circus Cafe, owned by Claude Maddox. The killers had expected to kill Moran and 2 or 3 of his men, but they were unexpectedly confronted with 7 men. They simply decided to kill them all and get out fast.
What a great plan, honestly.
For real. Bolton claimed that Capone was furious with him for his mistake and the resulting police pressure and threatened to kill him, only to be dissuaded by Fred Goetz. His claims...
Fred Goetz.
I know, that guy coming through. He only killed a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
His claims were corroborated by Gus Winkler's widow, Georgette, in an official FBI statement and in her memoirs, which were published in a 4-part series in a True Detective magazine during the winter of 1935 to 1936. She revealed that her husband and his friends had formed a special crew used by Capone for high-risk jobs.
I'd say this is high risk.
That's pretty high risk. The mob boss was said to have trusted them implicitly and nicknamed them the American Boys.
Oh.
Bolton's statements were also backed up by William Drury, a Chicago detective who had stayed on the massacre case long after everyone else had already given up. Bank robber Alvin Karpus later claimed to have heard secondhand from Ray Nugent, that's like, what's his name,
Crane neck,
about the massacre and that the American Boys were paid a collective salary of $2,000 a week plus bonuses.
Jesus Christ.
$2,000 a week back then was... it's big now.
Well, yeah. To me, it's like shit.
It's big now. But back then, Jesus.
Yeah, in 1929?
That's a lot.
Frick, dude.
Yeah. Karpus, the bank robber, also claimed that Capone had told him while they were in Alcatraz together that Goetz had been the actual planner of the massacre. Despite Byron Bolton's statements, no action was taken by the FBI. All of the men whom he named were dead by 1935, with the exception of Burke and Maddox. Bank robber Harvey Bailey. Why are there so many bank robbers?
That's what you did in the 20s. You either were bootlegging or you're bank robbing.
Yeah, or you're uppity.
I'm going to write a song about that. Bootlegging and bank robbing.
Beautiful. So, bank robber Harvey Bailey complained in his 1973 autobiography that he and Fred Burke had been drinking beer in Calumet City, don't quote me, Illinois, at the time of the massacre, and the resulting heat forced them to abandon their bank robbing ventures. Sad.
I'm just, you know what? I don't want to rob banks anymore.
No, can't do it.
Drinking beer in Illinois. How great.
Right. What a great time.
Illinois.
So,
get out of here. Go somewhere good.
Right.
Sorry, Illinois.
Historians are still divided on whether or not the American Boys committed the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And I'm very sorry to say that's where it ends.
Yeah, it's never solved.
Here's the thing. Did Al Capone have something to do with it? Yeah.
Yep.
He sure did. For legal reasons, I don't know.
Yeah.
For legal reasons, I don't know. I don't know who could sue me. I don't know if he's got like a descendant
maybe
that
thinks he was innocent
could
of all
sue me. I'm just saying it's very likely that he had a lot to do with it.
So, where does the haunting come in, guys?
Well,
that's the end of it.
Where there's murders, there's ghosties.
Well, not always.
That's true.
So, like I said before, Alcatraz is something that I would like to do an episode on. And Alcatraz is said to be like haunted, and there's like, if you know anything about Al Capone, he wasn't a stranger to the paranormal. Mm-hmm. The location of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre has been haunted for years, people say. And afterwards, people were actually taking the bricks from the building as like keepsakes. Mm-hmm. And it said that the bricks were terrible luck. They just bring bad luck or bring hauntings. And Al Capone himself, up until the day he died, said that he was haunted by an entity. Like,
I'm sure.
He wasn't shy about his paranormal escapades.
And you know what? Who's to say that he was haunted by any one of those people? You know how many people he had killed?
Oh, for real?
All of them.
For real. So I'm getting this information from a website called hauntedhouses.com. So grain of salt. It's a nice website.
They have some good stuff on there.
They have some good information, and it's laid out very nicely. So I'm just going to read right from the website. Like I said, the location of this brutal mass killing has been haunted for years. People have reported unusual lights and mists, like not quite apparitions, but mists have been reported. A lot of male voices are heard when no one else is around. Sounds of screaming or machine gun fire are still heard by people that live near the place. They can hear it.
That's a big yikes.
Sensitive people, such as sidekicks or people who are just sensitive to that kind of stuff, who stand in front of the fenced lawn or walk by it, will get a sense of fear. And animals don't like to walk on the same side of the sidewalk. Animals will have, like if you're going to walk your dog, they have an adverse reaction walking up to and past this place. And like I said, the bricks were said to be haunted or bring like really bad luck. The theory is that the bricks soaked in all of the powerful negative energy from the killings. They just held on to the energy, and whoever took them, you know.
I'd like to get myself a hand on one of those bricks.
They're all in a museum. It's actually in a museum. They like rebuilt the wall in the museum, bullet holes and all. It's creepy.
I did see a picture of that.
Yeah, we can post a picture of it.
I'm one of those freaks who would want a brick just to have.
Oh yeah, same. Legend has it that after the nightclub outlived its purpose, it was a nightclub, the bricks were taken out and sold individually for $1,000 each. But many of the bricks that were sold were promptly given right back or given to new owners because they suffered rashes of bad luck. Others say that the bricks were never sold individually but were kept together in a packed box, numbered, with a diagram as to how to put the wall back together, with the hopes that a single buyer would put the whole wall of bricks back together. So we kind of really don't know how the bricks have ended up back together. I've definitely heard a lot of stories of people owning these bricks. There's witness accounts of people owning the bricks. After the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Capone, he wasn't viewed in such a high light anymore. Shocking. Capone himself got his just desserts. Oh. Unfortunately for Al Capone, consequences resulted as a result of the planned massacre carried out by his hired gunmen. Allegedly, for legal purposes, we have to say allegedly. People were repulsed by this killing, and a lot of political pressure resulted in nailing Capone for tax evasion. He went to prison. He was sentenced to 11 years, winding up on the Rock of Alcatraz, it says. Though he only stayed until 1939, he, for lack of a better term, retired after his 11 years.
I don't know. I don't believe that he retired.
Not completely.
I feel like once a gangster, always a gangster.
Yeah. It was said that the entity of Moran's brother-in-law, James Clark, immediately started to haunt Al Capone. That was the apparition and the entity that he felt. Al Capone was actually living in Florida at the time of the massacre. He wasn't even in the state.
I don't know why that doesn't even surprise me.
Convenient. He tried to send the entity to the other side via a medium in 1931, but it didn't work. Well, here's the thing. If I was shot and killed by some vengeful gangster, mafia honcho, I'm not crossing over.
No, I got
beef with you, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna ruin the rest of your life, pal. Even if it's just moving everything in your house an inch to the left.
Right.
I'm gonna do it.
Oh, that would drive me nuts. After the medium, sending to the other side didn't work, Capone was broken in spirit and mind, and he returned to Florida after being released from prison. The entity reappeared and haunted him until he died. Like, he claimed up until his death that the ghost of James Clark haunted him.
Yikes. And that's on karma.
Yeah. Al Capone is buried at Mount Carmel Cemetery. It is said that he sometimes appears to the disrespectful visitors who come to visit his family plot. Don't be disrespectful if you go to visit his plot, but
I kind of want to go to his plot.
Yeah, I want to. You gonna show up? I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but are you gonna show up? I want to see you.
I want to show up. I'm not gonna be rude.
No.
I press a button or two.
We can press a couple. You're a gangster. I can press a button or two.
You gotta have thick skin, okay?
Yeah, for real. So yeah, that's the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and that's how we brought it back to being haunted.
We hope that it was relatively easy to follow. We know it's a little bit more true crime, and we like to stay away from that for the most part. We like to keep it more spooky, ghostly, mysterious.
But we wanted something to do for Valentine's Day, and we tried to find some weird.
We tried to find ghosts that only come out on Valentine's Day. We tried to find out about
that's so hard to search.
Ghosts that haunt couples. We
just kept getting TV show recommendations.
Yeah, and so we landed on this, but it does have a little bit of paranormal ending.
Yeah, and like we said, I do want to do Alcatraz sometime soon, and I mean, Al Capone has something to do with Alcatraz too. So, and Alcatraz is haunted.
Yeah.
So
we really hope you enjoyed this one. I did.
Yeah.
I definitely think that Al Capone had. I don't think he physically did anything.
He set the plan in motion.
I don't think
There's no doubt.
He didn't have his hand on a machine gun. I think he definitely had a pretty good part in planning.
Yeah, but you can still be charged for murder even if you don't.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So let us know who you think did it. You can reach out to us on any of our social media sites, and there are many.
We have a link tree.
Yeah, we have a link tree that you can access them all on. We are on Instagram at Sunday Night Spookies, on Twitter at Sunday Spookies, on Facebook at the Sunday Night Spookies Podcast, on TikTok at Sunday Night Spookies, and on YouTube at Sunday Night Spookies. So let us know who you think did it.
Yeah.
Is it anybody besides Al Capone? I'm interested, given what we've learned today.
Yeah. We also have some links in our description box. We got a link for Buzzsprout. That's the podcast hosting website that we use. It is amazing. It is so simple, relatively cheap to use for how much you get with it. It's so nice. So if you want to start your own podcast, Buzzsprout tracks everything from your ratings, your views, where the people are. Like, we can see that people in Asia listen to us, or Europe, which is crazy and super cool. It tracks all of our sponsorships and all of it. It's such a good website. So if you'd like to use it, go ahead and use our link below. We also have an Instacart link. I hate grocery shopping. I use Instacart pretty much almost every week. You can get your groceries delivered to you in as little as an hour. And if you use our link, you get free delivery on your first order over $30. And we also have our spirit box linked and our EMF detector linked, which are two pieces of equipment we never leave behind. They are like the two main staples. And you can get those through Amazon. All of these goods and services are affiliate links. So if you do decide to use our link, we do get a small kickback. But again, all of these goods and services are available without our link if you feel more comfortable doing it that way. We also have a support the show link. We are two college girls, and running a podcast that goes on investigations can be taxing on financial status.
Taxing in every way.
Yeah, we're tired.
We are very tired.
So if you'd like to donate to our cause, if there's a specific location you want us to look into, you can donate to our Cash App. All of the donations we receive go 100% right back into this podcast for better equipment, locations, podcast, fees and hosting fees and all that. Just to give you guys better and more content. We appreciate everything you do, even if you just listen and give us a rating on whatever podcasting app you listen to. Guys, it helps us out tremendously.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sunday Night Spookies.
Join us next week for an episode all about psychic abilities.
New episodes are released every Sunday evening. Thanks so much for listening, and as always, stay spooky. Your dog just grunted at me because I wasn't petting her. Thank you. Yes, thank you.